So this is what this lesson's about. It's using visual illustrations in the service, and I think this was meant for servants meeting. In fact, it says servants meeting right there on the bottom, but it's not really just for servants and the Sunday school kids. This could be us with our kids as well. I think we know there's 5 love languages, but there's also different ways kids learn. So it's one thing to tell a kid, hey, don't do this. It's another kid to show him how to do it the right way. So as I'm not preparing it, but as I'm going through these slides, this verse, he highlighted it, says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I think I read that, and I read it, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with that verse, but it kind of struck me because even the picture, he put everything together. It's just, I want to give him as much credit because it was a great lesson, and that's why we're doing it today. And hopefully you guys get 10% of what he gave us in servants meeting. But what do you guys see in the picture? Wash the dishes, right? How many of us, you don't have to raise your hands, but how many of us would actually do that? Some of us might, some of us might not. And if we might not, it's because guess what? If they wash it, they're not going to do it the right way. And it's going to make more of a mess than it is actually going to clean the dishes. And it's sort of, hey, I want you to do it my way. If you don't do it my way, just don't do it at all. Let's just hurry up. And I feel like I don't know if every generation says this, but it does feel like this generation, we're very fast-paced. And if you're not doing something, then you're wasting time. Even if it's looking at your phone at something and you put it in your mind, you're being productive, it always feels like you're wasting time. Like at the end of the day, what do you have to show for your time? And if it's, oh, I just sat there with my kid for 20 minutes teaching him something, and maybe they didn't get it by the end, you feel like, oh, that was a waste of time. Like we could have, the reason we're late is because I was trying to teach him something, and then I had to rush them, hey, we have to go, we're late, and we came late. So I think the key word to parenting is patience. I don't know if that still exists. I know it's hard to find patient. I know it's hard to be patient, but it does feel like, put your shoes on, get in the car. If you don't finish this, we're leaving, and we're going to leave you by yourself. We exaggerate even the punishment. We say, like, all right, if you don't finish your food and hurry up, we're going to go to Chuck E. Cheese, and you're going to be by yourself at home all day. And everyone knows we're not going to do that. And the kid just, they even take their time even more just because they like seeing the parent frustrated. But it is something that we have to be careful of, because really the thing is, we're trying to make them eat fast. Guess what? That's probably a bad habit, because later on when they eat fast, they eat more, and then, obesity, and there's a lot of negative health effects, versus taking their time, talking to them while they're eating, getting to know them. But this picture was just eye-opening because, today we do the crafts together, and Ruth has to hammer the little thing, and probably takes her like 20 times to hammer a little nail in the wood, and I'm sitting there, hey, we're gonna be late, Ruth, let me just do it for you. And it's always something that comes up, even in stuff that's for them, not even like, all right, I need this for work. It's no, this is you're gonna be your craft, but I'm still trying to rush them to do things the right way or the efficient way rather than their way, and learning from their mistakes. It's not really part of the lesson, but I did want to highlight that verse. All right, so these are ways to teach your kids spiritually, right? Or just really not just for spiritual lessons, but in general, we also do it for physical things, right? So the common way is visual. So how does the church use visual images to represent, to get us closer to God? How do you guys think? Or what do you guys think? Icons, right? So icons. So do you guys know why the church uses icons? First of all, are icons just people of pictures, just, hey, smile, take a picture, and then that's the icon? Or what did the icons tell us? Stories, right? A lot of times in the past, people were illiterate, so they couldn't read. So even when you do, they don't say draw an icon or color an icon. They say write an icon. because the icon isn't supposed to be just a picture of a saint. It's supposed to, like, we know that story is Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And we know that because it tells us the story of the Samaritan woman, right? If it was just Jesus standing next to a girl in the middle and there's, I don't know, hashtags and Instagram things in the background, it wouldn't be anything. It would just be a random picture. But every picture is supposed to tell you a story, right? Which that helps people focus more. That's good for your kids, you know, like when you take your kids around the church and you kind of talk to them about, maybe not every single week, but if you're sitting next to one of the icons, you could tell them that story about that specific icon. What about listening, right? What do we chant in church? Hymns, right? When we're driving in the car, you know, what do we listen to? When they come here, I mean, I think the most common excuse kids don't come to church when they grow up is church is boring, right? We don't understand what's happening. Part of why we did the American Orthodox Church is because, all right, you don't understand Coptic, you don't understand Arabic, so let's do everything in English so you could understand everything. But I don't think that that's the only reason they say it's boring. I think part of it is because they also don't participate. I'm about to be 40 soon, and I still don't know all the hymns. Like if you told me, hey, Nagy, here, lead the liturgy as a deacon, and everyone's going to follow your lead. I don't know most of the hymns. So it's sort of, you know, it's kind of something I didn't grow up with. My parents, we didn't enforce learning hymns. We didn't enforce hymns class. We didn't listen to hymns. We listened to maybe some spiritual songs, but it was something that was foreign to us. Like hymns was related to church. We only do that on Sundays. We don't do that on weekdays. We could listen to, you know, Father Abraham during the rest of the week, but not hymns during the middle of the week. These are just good practices. Again, you're training up a child. We're, as servants, we're with them 1 hour a week, maybe 2 if we do a visitation or an outing. But the majority of the work, and yes, I want to listen to podcasts, I want to listen to the news, I want to listen to my music when I'm driving, I want to listen to stuff that has a beat to it when I'm driving, but I do think part of it is if we focus on, all right, maybe 20 minutes hymns, 20 minutes, whatever, like on the way there, some hymns, on the way back, some of the other music. But something like focus on it. Make it practical, though. Don't say, all right, I'm going to go just hymns from now until forever. Like, be reasonable. They also need that fun experience as well. And eventually, actually, ironically, hymns becomes fun. So Ben, you guys know Ben, Raphael, Mark's brother. A lot of times he'll tell me, hey, you have to do this chant on Sunday in 2 weeks, and he'll send it to me to learn. So all I listen to back and from work that week is that hymn. At first, it's like, oh, I don't know if I could do this. It's not easy. And by the end of it, it's like I'm actually singing it when it's not even on, you know? So it does stick in your mind. We also have reading. So usually we have 5 things we read during the liturgy, not matins, but 5 readings during the liturgy. So again, if that means if a kid likes stories and they like hearing someone tell them a bedtime story and they're willing to listen, let's be honest, the readings, a lot of times no one focuses. But that's a good opportunity, you know, take a kid aside and tell them, hey, what did you learn from that? You know, maybe take a verse and say, what does that verse mean to you? I don't think what I'm saying is good for all ages. Obviously, like if I talk to my 1-year-old about a verse, she has no idea what a verse even is. But I do think you guys kind of know where your kids are at. And instead of saying, all right, they won't pay attention to the reading, let's just go outside and sit with them, try to focus something spiritual from that reading. And it doesn't have to be from every single reading. It could just be from one thing. Like, hey, what did that story tell? What did Jesus do in that story? You know, do you know why the Samaritan woman was thirsty, or why he was thirsty? Like anything. And we'll go through some examples during this as to how to relate to some kids in different ages. And then experiential. This, I think, I mean, Abe said it, but I think we all know this. I think this is the biggest thing, right? If you ask people, how did you learn? how to do something, it's usually because of experience, right? I know Andrew does teeth, but if he just graduated and he wanted to, I don't know, break my jaw or something, and it was his first procedure, I would reconsider. I'd say, you're smart and all, but if it's your first, unless it was free, but but you know, you don't just trust someone out of school, like medical field. You don't just trust someone. Oh, I read it in a book. I know how to do it. You kind of have to back things up with experience, right? As Christians, though, do we let our kids experience things? For example, if a child, we tell them there's kids, if you don't finish your food, there's kids that don't have any food. Have they seen those kids, or is it sort of just something we put in their head that, hey, there's kids out there that have no food? We tell them your old clothes we're going to give away because some people don't have clothes. Have we even showed them anything on TV? And I know there's guidelines, and you shouldn't just take them to the middle of nowhere and show them, oh, these are the poor families or anything like that. But I do think there's a time where you need to do something like that, where me and Mira went on a mission trip to Bolivia. And I know, for example, there's people that take their kids to these kinds of mission trip. Now, there might be more 12, 13-year-olds, like maybe in the teenage level. When I used to volunteer at Ronald McDonald back in the day, we'd get letters from kids to other kids. So like their Sunday school classes would write letters to some of the kids. They'd basically be pen pals. Like they would write letters to each other, which is a good, because they can't go in as a minor. But there's other ways to get creative to get them to see and suffer with those kids in that situation. Later on, you could imagine, like, it's the kid's birthday, he's supposed to get a present, he's like, no, I want to give it to my pen pal and Ronald McDonald. So like it becomes like a good relationship, but they feel it. It's not just a matter of, oh, there's kids that are sick, we should pray for them. I mean, we should do that, and maybe at certain ages that's where we should stick to. But if there's a way you could make the kids experience that poverty and show them, hey, this world isn't as great as it is right now, and there's other people suffering, and we could help them out in any other way, like that's going to stick with them more than just telling them, hey, you should do this. And even us as parents, I mean, I know sometimes we might do the right thing, like maybe, like I said, I volunteered at Ronald McDonald, but I never took the time to explain to my kids what that is. You know, I was just sort of, oh, I used to do that, but now that have kids, I tell myself, oh, I don't have time to do that, which I think it's more important to do it now so they could see it and train them up rather than in the past. All right, so we're going to go through this now, and he put some notes here, but like everyone learns liturgy differently. So yes, we do get we can get bored at liturgy, and that's probably a true statement for most people. But part of it is if you know what's going on, if you understand it. I'll ask my Sunday school kids, and they're like middle school. Why does Abuna go around in a circle? Why does he use a censer? Most times, and probably even older people, they don't know. They don't know the answer. And a lot of times if you don't know something, I mean, your least favorite subject in school was probably something you did not enjoy, right? Or you did not understand. So it's a common theme, right? If you're not enjoying liturgy, it's not because the liturgy, it's because you don't understand it, which is fine. But the only way you're going to understand it is if you put effort into understanding it, and if you put effort into teaching your kids how to understand it and how to absorb what's going on. All right. So this verse he put in, and I'm gonna summarize some of it. But he says, "And to the Jews I became as a Jew." This is Saint Paul to the Corinthians, and he says that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. What do you guys think that means, that verse, and how it relates to this? exactly. So, but if they're a sinful nature, do we act sinful or? Okay, yeah. So humble and loving. What else? What do you guys think? Like, what's a simple way of saying what she just said? Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? It's catering to your audience. Like like my daughter's 3 and 1 year old. I'm not gonna go get the New King James Version Bible and start reading to them and expecting them to sit still and if they move around like they're grounded and that's not how like it's not just one size fits all or one punishment fits all or one book and that's it. We kind of have to understand who our audience is. In sports they say KYP, know your personnel. So for example, if someone knows how to shoot a 3-point shot and he's open, I know to pass to him. But if someone doesn't know how and he's wide open but he's in half court, then I'd rather pass to someone else who's like where their position is, because I know that's a turnover waiting to happen. So you don't want to treat like you have to be very careful, because guess what, if you just start reading the Bible and they're moving around and you just punish them, eventually they're not going to like the Bible. They're just it's resentful, like they're not enjoying it. You're not enjoying it. You're just a disciplinary force. And every time you read the Bible, it's like they don't want to do that. In church, yes, I'm not a lot of us have younger kids. It's okay to take them out, feed them. It's okay to do all that stuff. It's not sit here, be quiet. Oh, it's time to stand up. You're officially walking now. You need to stand up. Like that's not how it works. But we also need to. There is a period where we know they want to go outside, but we also know that they didn't sit inside of church for a while, and we need to try to discipline them a little bit and say, all right, today we'll try to do 10 minutes or 15, whatever the case may be, depending on the age. Actually, I like what you guys, Fetty and Marlene, how you guys give them like a break time. Yeah. You want to? Can you tell us about that? Okay. Okay, so it's getting less. But one of them, like Simon, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Third child. I wouldn't know, but but it's good because they're aware of it. Like when you if you don't set a timer with a kid, then they're yeah. But if you set a timer, then they know their boundaries. You're putting in some boundaries. Yeah, yeah. So like we adopted that from them. It's not working as well, but we're still learning on counting how many breaks. um, Yeah. I don't know if you guys heard that in the back, but on the way to church, you kind of tell your kids, we're going to have 4 breaks. Each break is going to be 5 minutes, and this is what we want to do. And then, but we have to sit quietly in church as well. And do they earn the breaks, or is it sort of just like, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so they know, like, I think that's the biggest question we get from kids as deacons, and even probably now, is how long is left, right? Like, is church almost over? And like when you get them a watch, that's sort of, you know, like, hey, when it says 11, then we're almost done, and that's kind of what a watch does. Is that's all they're doing the whole liturgy now. So even now, like, there's older deacons who will ask the same thing. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, you could bring the books too, and oh, yeah. So that's a good question. And I mean, sometimes we just tell them, oh, there's 20 minutes left. But even then, they don't know what 20 minutes really is, you know, because 20 minutes in something you're bored in could be feel like 2 hours. So yeah, yeah, to the kids. Mm-hmm. So, told my parents church is boring, and my mom flipped and she said, "How dare you say church is boring? You have to go confess." And I was like 10 or 12, and it just made me feel like there's something I don't get or church isn't for me, and like the fact that I thought it was boring and like it's this. She made it seem like the biggest sin that humankind ever committed by saying church is boring. Um, yeah, like it made me feel it just made me feel like I guess I'm the only one that struggles waking up on Sunday morning and everyone else kind of wakes up cheering like we can't go like and get there early and but yeah, But Fedi, I had a question, follow-up question. Is there a limit to when you would say you're sorry? Like, is there something you know you did wrong, but you wouldn't tell the kids, or because you kind of asked like, if there's a boundary? Is there anything like that, or do you think if they see you do something wrong, you would always say? Yeah. I think I agree with that, Sylvia. Yeah. So stick to. It's kind of like exercising. Like a lot of times, like you want to go to the gym, but you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't feel like it. But you never like regret. Oh, like I can't believe I burned 500 calories going to the gym. I wish I get them back. Like you never regret that. But you always feel good after. You feel like you've done a big accomplishment. And I think part of it is getting in the habit, because yes, there's times you feel like, okay, I'm just gonna go and you do it. But then like if you don't have that um, routine and you tell yourself I'm going to do it this time or whatever, like this workout tomorrow, this work the day after, you sort of start losing it, and you just go by emotions, like what do I feel like working out today, or how much do I feel like working out. And I think pushing yourself is the key, right? You don't want to just do 5 pound dumbbells to forever. Basically, you'll never grow. um, but those are good. I think one thing, Andrew, to answer your question, growing up, my dad like told me like he was the kind, like Fedi. He would always tell me if he did something wrong. Like he's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you or whatever. And I think over time, like just speaking now, like from Fedi's 8 kids in the future, like it does make me feel okay. He's human too, versus he's never had any problem. Like it shows me that he makes mistakes and he's not ashamed to apologize. So it always makes me feel like if I do something wrong, like today, I was telling the girls, okay, we have to hurry, we have to go to church, and Ruth didn't want to wear her seatbelt, so I yelled at her, like, you have to hurry up and wear it. And then I apologized, I yelled, stuff like that. And I think, like, she kind of saw that she wasn't that upset, but she made it, like even the little things. Like I don't try not to let those go either, because to her that could be a big thing. Um, I listen to a lot of like Focus on the Family. I don't know if you guys heard of that, but a lot. But they also like they're pro apologizing to your kids if you do something wrong as well. Yeah, to own up to their ownership. I think that's a big thing. Is a lot of times we want to push it off or blame them. Like the reason I yelled is because you didn't wear your seatbelt. But in the end, like I still shouldn't have yelled. Like yes, you should have worn your seatbelt. But in the end, I also did something wrong. So this is sort of a story. I think you guys know it. David versus Goliath. And right now, part of what we just discussed is how to cater to your audience. And we're kind of going to go through different ages, right? So this is the basic story. David versus Goliath. You guys know what happened. And we're going to show like what kind of things each group would get out of this same story. Actually, I'll highlight something for you guys too, just because Abe did it. And you guys know what this icon is? So St. Luke drawing St. Mary and Jesus. So it was traditionally, I guess, or historically, or legend says St. Paul drew the first icon. It was St. Mary. So that's the icon of that icon. But there's a lot of cool icons throughout this. So I'll point them out for you guys because I had no idea about half of them. All right, so we kind of mentioned, so this is infants to toddlers. So most of you don't really have that age group. Some of you might. But he talks about repetition. You want to repeat the same thing. Sometimes, actually, we'll read to Ruth the Bible story, and we'll read like the story of Jonah over and over again, and she'll be in her own world. Like we're reading, and she kind of just goes to the shoe rack, starts putting on random shoes. Like we don't even know if she's paying attention. But what we realized, and this was before she even turned two, we'll stop in the middle of a word. Like I forget what happened, but like I stopped to like sneeze or cough or something, and as I stopped, she just kept reciting the rest of the story without even looking at like the book or looking at what I'm reading. Like she just had it memorized, and we recorded it because we were both kind of shocked that she memorized the story. We didn't even think she was paying attention, but really she understood. It's like their brains are like sponges. They hear and understand everything you say, and they hear. I don't know if they understand everything you say, but they definitely hear everything you say and they absorb everything. Um, so repetition is key. Um, they start using their senses. They want to explore what's around them, and you'll see that. They'll put random stuff, like they'll find whatever on the floor, a rock, and they'll start putting it in their mouth, and you have to yell at them every few minutes and let them know, nope, we don't do that, we don't do this. And that could be an exhausting job, but that's that age, right? Um, so they're talking here in the service. We have a 2-year-old class. They're saying that right now they just hear the story. They understand everything literally, right? So that's something to kind of be careful with. If you say, I'm going to the moon, they don't really take that as an imagination. They look at it like, oh, he's actually going to go to that thing up there. So you kind of have to be careful, because when you're talking about story of David versus Goliath, it's not good versus evil to them. It's literally a guy named David and a guy named Goliath, and that's it. Like they don't really look at the meaning behind the story. So you don't want to get into philosophical while you're explaining the story to them. You just want to tell them, all right, this is a guy. He hit this guy because this guy did not like God or something like that. Imagery. So you could have them draw. You could have them play with like maybe action figures. Those are good ways to kind of bring them to that story, right? So you kind of have to cater to your audience. That's 0 to 2. I don't think most of you have 0 to 2. You guys do, but that's about it. But yeah, it's just something to be careful. Understand how to cater to that audience. So drawing and imaginary play means effort, right? It's not, here's a book, go read it and let us know what you think of the story. It means we actually need to get paper, we need to get markers, we're going to get those markers all over our shirt, and we're going to be upset, but we're still, like, it means effort. It means we kind of have to know, and because they're trying to explore everything, so those markers are going to be all over the walls, and so get yourself ready, make time for it, because they do need to learn the story, and it's a matter of putting in effort. And I'm not saying this because I do this. In fact, I don't. If anyone does it, Mira does it, but it's still something like, if we do want them to get the story and we want them to get into the Bible, that's a good way to start for that age. Anyone know what this icon is? So this is supposed to be the kids that died in Bethlehem. Was it Bethlehem? Yeah, Bethlehem. Yeah. Herod killed. Remember, he said kill all the male kids. So the first martyrs. All right, 3 to 5. So this, now they enjoy being read to. They're starting to get the story. It's not just a guy named David. It's a guy named Goliath. It's actually, David and Goliath fought, and there's a plot to the story. It's not just, there's just random characters, and we like when we hear these random characters' name. It's actually, there's a story created in their mind. So they do enjoy story time. So this is where, if you want to do something with them, maybe you could read them stories. They're starting to learn consequences, which is a big thing, because a lot of times we're starting to think, all right, we come up with consequences that don't make sense, right? Like we're gonna if you don't clean up your mess, you're not gonna have any dessert for life. You know, like we just come up with, and we think that's a brilliant consequence when we first say it, and there's no way they're not gonna clean up their mess, but they always pick what we don't want them to do. Like it's like they're trained to disobey. And part of that is because I was reading a book on it. They actually like seeing the frustration on the parents' faces, and you can see it from 6 months old. You'll put them on a high chair and you'll give them a bottle, and they'll throw the bottle, and then you tell them, okay, please don't do that again. You put the bottle on their chair, and the first thing that they do is they'll pick up the bottle and throw it again, and they'll start laughing, and you're frustrated, and you just keep doing it over and over again. What they're looking for is your reaction. You know, so the book I was reading, it's called Parenting Through Love and Logic. And it says, okay, whenever they do something like that, what you do is you say, okay, here's the bottle. If you do it again, this is after the first time they do it, you won't have the bottle until the next meal. And if they do it again, you take it away and you say, okay, we just lost it for next meal, but let's talk about something else. And you start, and if they cry, you just say, you made that decision, and that's it. You don't give them more and more chances. But it's a really cool book. But that makes it seem you have to come up with consequences, right? And I think the biggest key is when you come up with a consequence, when should you come up with a consequence? Like when you're not angry. Very good. Is that like, so let's say your kids do something right now. What, give me a timeline of when you would come up with a consequence. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 No, that's very good. I think the key to this, and this is something just for all of us to be aware, and I think you guys do a great job, is you don't have to come up with the consequence right when the incident happens. A lot of times we feel like if we don't, they're gonna forget what especially when the younger kids, like maybe your kids now understand and reason, but our kids, you know, we feel like, oh, you spilled water, okay, no water. You know, we kind of have to do it right now, or else they'll be like, when did I spill water a week ago? You know, like they might not think. Andrew, you have
No, I was gonna say it's kind of like sending an angry email. Like
something.
it's like in the heat of the moment, it's like you're reacting to it, and man, that email is gonna be fire. But then you go back and you look back, and you're like, okay, I could probably like calm this down. And I think sometimes it's actually worse for them when you don't tell them the consequence, and they just have to sit there and simmer like, oh man, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? So like, there's not. It's like it's okay to not tell them like right away. You know, let them kind of roll.
No, that's a good. That's a good analogy. Yeah. No, that's yeah. So the consequence, one, I think, as a married couple, you and your wife talking about it is a key, because a lot of times, like, I just want to kind of make a decision right there and then, like the angry email, like, all right, this is the most severe thing I can, no dessert all day, you know, or like you said, without really thinking about it. But I think when you and your, a lot of times, this is what I notice. I might not care about the action as much as she does, and vice versa. So I have a more calmer, or she might be more calmer about like for me, it's like, oh, you're gonna miss your swim thing meet, and like to me that's a big thing, like sports. But to her, if we're late to that, she's fine. Versus like if we're late to, I don't know, like a wedding, then I might not care as much, but she might want, no, they have to go early, and so there might be some differences, and like to where she could think of a better punishment for my side, and vice versa. Um, so the book Love and Logic, and this is to older age, it talks about how, for example, the guy told the son, "You have to clean the garage before Saturday," and they leave it at that. They don't tell him the consequence. They don't do anything. And the story goes like the son said, "Sure, Dad, I will." And then it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, nothing happens. And then Saturday morning, the son comes to the dad, said, "Okay, I need to ride to soccer practice." He's like, "All right, is the garage clean?" And the son says, "No, it's not, but soccer game's about to start." He's like, "All right." And he just sits on the couch, doesn't take him. And the kid keeps complaining. He's like, "Well, is the garage like?" He just keeps asking him, "Is the garage clean?" And they actually missed the soccer game. But kind of like what you were saying. And then eventually the son says, "Okay, it's a consequence because I didn't do it." Because life is going to teach them consequences. So it's a matter of you guys teaching them, us teaching them earlier than later. Um, mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. The one thing I heard too about like consequences not right away is because you always think, oh, the kid's gonna forget the consequences related to this, but they said the way they explained it is when you tell a kid, "Hey, next week I'm gonna take you out for ice cream," they're never gonna forget that. Every day they're gonna ask you, so they always have that memory. So it's not. So I think sometimes we put in our mind if we don't come up with a consequence now, they just won't they won't correlate, but they do have a pretty good memory. We just don't sit down and explain it to them sometimes. Um, all right, so you guys could all imagine the kids don't like sitting there for a long period of time from that age group. Again, this group they think literally and not figuratively. Um, so you want to kind of show them more pictures and more stories. Here they actually don't recommend as much videos as much. Like they want you to kind of go because they're too stimulating. You kind of want to go picture, explain the picture to them versus a video that does everything. There's just a lot going on. I know we personally do a lot of videos, and there's times where you kind of have to be. There's times where it feels like that's the best way to get them to be quiet, to get them to concentrate. It's a church video, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but based on this, they say pictures and just explaining the pictures is the best way to go. There's actually YouTube videos of people reading books, so it's just not a lot all at once. Anyone know who that saint is? There's a church named after her. Close. It's in here. It's in Houston, huh? Juletta or Julita and her son Kyriakos. Yeah. Here also they say like if you're doing David versus Goliath, this is where you might want to bring a helmet in, have the kids touch the helmet, slingshot, things like that, so they could see what those things you're talking about, like experience some sort of real life action. Now we get to the 6 to 7 year olds. They're more aware of their surrounding. They read. There's art involved. Um, you know, this is where they're kind of more attentive. they could kind of be a bit self-sustained. They're starting to be okay with things. They know consequences now, but now they're seeing, uh, there's like the story of David and Goliath. They're kind of understanding good versus evil. Like they're seeing one person's actions were evil, one person's actions were good. So they're getting the idea more and more. But you do have to break down the lesson to them a bit. You can't just say, all right, what does the story teach you? Like they might not figure it out on their own. You kind of have to give them some guidelines. But they could read usually at that age pretty good. So it's encouraged to kind of let them read and figure things out on their own, but also be that guideline so they're not totally depending on themselves. And ask them like clarifying questions, like, why do you think David did this? Like, why what did Goliath do that was wrong? Stuff like that, to where they kind of try to look for some meaning behind the story on themselves without you actually giving them all the answers. Like get them to think, basically. We have 8 to 10-year-olds. This is where now they have adults, they respect adults and heroes. Like if someone says no, it's like no ma'am, yes sir, whatever. Those kind of, like, this is where they're more aware of who's who. There's faith in God has started to mature. So this is a big thing right now. This is where you could get them to get closer to God, and they could pray on their own. You don't have to tell them this is the only time we pray, or this is the time we make a point to pray. They could actually pray on their own. Love to learn about faith and Bible heroes. So encourage them, right? Get them books to read about Bible heroes. Go to the monastery, maybe. Take them wherever. These are ways to, like, I think we all have it easy because we have TV these days. But this is where, I don't know if any of you have been to Israel, but if I went to Israel first and then I read the Bible after, I would not really be into the Bible. But a lot of when you read the Bible, your imagination kind of grows and you start picturing these scenes. But when I saw Israel, I'm like, oh, this is not how I imagined all these scenes at all. It's very commercialized. But that's kind of how it is. If you just make them watch a TV show, let them think for themselves. Let them think, how big is Goliath? Like, he's just huge. And instead of you just showing them, oh, he's actually this tall. Let them explore their imagination in the Bible. So this is where symbolism starts, right? This is good. This is evil. Oh, Goliath. God helped David defeat Goliath because Goliath was evil. God was on David's side. Then we have preteens. This is normal. They like competition, right? This is a big thing. Competition gets you to grow. Most of us, when we grew up exercising and doing things, is because we're competitive. I know some kids aren't competitive and some are. So there's games, they could enjoy their times playing games, Bible trivia. These are all things that require effort on our part as parents. Speaking for myself, sometimes it's hard to find time to be enthusiastic, or sometimes I'll look at this and say, it's just a game, it's not going to help that much, and just not worry too much about it. But these are things that are going to help our kids grow closer to the church, so that later on, when they're adults, they stay in the church, God willing. But it does require effort on our part. Whenever people get married, there's a psalm they read, and the psalm says, I forget the exact words, but basically that your children will be like olive plants around your table. And the reason it says olive plants, not olive trees, is because olive plants take 15 years or 16 years to mature. And the key is, in Jewish tradition, when they had mealtime at the end of every day, they had to sit together at the table. That's when the dad was back home, the mom was done doing her house chores, the kids were at school or wherever they were learning in the house, and they would all eat together. But the dad had to be present at the dinner table. And that's where they would talk and catch up as a whole family. And that's a big thing. But nowadays, unfortunately, we're losing that. Like I'll get an email and I'll be like, okay, I have to go, and it's nothing huge. I could wait till tomorrow, but it's urgency. We don't really want to talk to our kids. We kind of just want to yell, hey, finish this, don't do that. We don't really take that time. A lot of what I'm saying is going to take effort. It's hard to plan a meal every single day at the same time with the family. And I know some of us travel, so even if we didn't travel, it would be hard. But it is a big thing or a big step to get them to be consistent, and for a family, like it is something that will help them grow and help us as a family stay together and help them be close to the church as we grow. And the reason I mentioned that is because preteens, phones, that's going to be a big thing. Cell phones, even if we're all together, everyone's probably going to be on their phone. Spiritual application, it says this age needs to be challenged more, which means we need to be challenged more. So we need to find challenges for them to be challenged. They're going to understand the lesson. This is where in class we might tell them, all right, here, why don't you teach this lesson? Tell us about your favorite hero or your favorite Bible story, and tell your other friends. Prepare a lesson. Help us plan this upcoming field trip. Which areas do you guys want to go to? Let's take a vote. Like, get them more involved. Family vacations, wherever we're going to the church. Where should we say? Like, give them the freedom to pick in some aspects, to where they feel like, all right, this is what we wanted, was our choice. Now, if you do give them the chance to pick something or choose, don't give them a choice you don't want or can't accept. For example, if my daughter, it's time to sleep, I'm not going to ask her, all right, do you want to stay awake and stay here all day and sleep on the couch? Or do you want to sleep in your bed? Like, because I don't want her to sleep on the couch. So it's basically, do you want to walk to bed or do you want me to carry you to bed? And now I'm still giving her a choice, but no matter what, it's a win-win. In the end, the result's the same. She's going to her bed. So as you give your kids choices, know they're probably going to pick the choice you don't want them to. Most of them will know which one you don't want, and they'll pick that. So just be aware of that. But the other thing is, be okay with whatever choice they pick. Like, put boundaries within your choices, to where if they say something you don't really want but you're okay with, that you could still accept. Of course, that doesn't mean sin and things like that. That's just like normal choices, like which cup do you want? If one of them leaks and one of them doesn't, you want to go with 2 cups that actually work well. And I'm speaking from my age, because this cup leaked on me this morning. Teenagers, I think some of us are getting there, and some of us might be there early, but teenagers are a whole different ball game, right? This is where they're basically adults in a kid's body. And I don't have experience with my actual teenagers, but 1, I was a teenager, and 2, nephews and nieces that are almost at that age. This is where they're adults. Treat them like adults, Consequences, the biggest mistake you could do with a consequence is give them one and not follow through on it. 1, they lose faith in you and they don't trust you. And on top of that, they're never going to respect your word, right? Like, not never, but it's harder to respect your word when you keep telling them, don't do this, and they do it, and you give them consequence and it never happens. And that's why it's very important for the husband and the wife to if it's a big consequence, it's best for them to kind of agree on the consequence. So that way it's like, if the kids actually deserve the consequence, it's okay to follow through, versus the husband or the wife saying, actually, that's too big of a consequence. You don't want to go back, but you also don't want to just say the worst consequence in front of them, or you don't want to not give a consequence, You want to make sure there is a consequence. Teenagers also, I think a big thing is encourage them to serve in different ways, right? We have so many services in church. Boys, there's altars, there's cleaning, there's St. Abraham where we minister to needy families. We have all these service events. We can even bring food to the homeless. So there's so many ways. I think Mark volunteers at Soaring Kids. where they help kids with disabilities play sports, and they need volunteers to just help them kick the soccer ball around. Little things here and there, but those are great services. Um, in that age, we should encourage them to serve others instead of just, all right, it's all about me, what I want, what I don't want. Like, help them to think of outside of that, see the world for what it is instead of what we made it to be. That's teenagers. And then these were just Abe's final thoughts. Each age responds differently. So again, that St. Paul verse, don't don't leave your kid. I don't know, like I'm not gonna take my 1-year-old to Bolivia at this age. It won't make that much sense. But maybe when she's older, that's when I'll do it. When you speak to them, you don't want to have the picture Bible with your teenager, for example. You kind of want to make them grow. Remember, we're pushing ourselves. As they grow, instead of everything just stories, you want them to start touching, hearing these things. Go to Israel on a family trip, whatever, just so they could kind of see what these stories are, where they came from, and where they're going. Have them experience those stories. And our role as servants is to know each child specifically, but even as parents, a lot of times I'll get a craft and it's like, all right, I have 2 kids, so I'll just get 2 crafts, but maybe one likes crafts, maybe one likes reading. It doesn't have to be each kid has to do the same thing. They might learn differently. There's different love languages. There's different ways they're going to learn. And I think these were just resources Abe had listed. I don't know if they pass out this, but these were good resources. So depending on your age group, these are all like websites or stories or books, but it gives you an idea of what the kids could learn, ideas of where you could find some resources in case you're like, all right, I want to challenge my kids in different ways. So you could take pictures of this and find something that suits your kids' needs. Like we have, like if St. Paul's doesn't have it, find maybe there's another church. I know St. Mary's has MCP. Like, feel free to sign your kids. Yeah. No, it's a very good point. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you guys. Okay, we'll pray and then we could go in peace, I guess. In the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Thank you, God, so much for bringing us all here today. Thank you for helping us learn more about children and how to deal with them. Help us take action. Help us be patient with our kids and not just train them hastily, but actually to be patient with them, have them make mistakes, have us be okay with them making mistakes, and watch them learn from their mistakes rather than us correcting them all the time. So please give us patience and wisdom in how to deal with them at different ages. Help them grow to love the church. Help us grow to love the church and be patient with them like you are patient with us, and our parents were more patient with us. Watch over us, Lord. Forgive our sins. Protect us and protect our kids. And hear us as we pray thankfully and say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.